Hello everyone, welcome back for another weekly update of our sky tonight. And again, this is Seth Mayo. I'm the Curator of Astronomy for the Lohmann Planetarium at MOAS. And for this week, we're covering the sky from May 4th through May 10th. So get out there and do some stargazing. And let's get started right away. We'll set the sun, we'll speed up time. And before we set the sun, we'll slow down things just a little bit. I usually just watch the sun set in this program, but let's change it up a little bit today, and we'll actually watch the eastern part of the sky, just because there's something to see in other parts of the sky during sunset. And if we do that, you'll see the moon will rise. So yes, you can see the moon quite often during the daytime, depends on what phase it's in. And so that's something to always look out for, the moon during the daytime or still in the sky when the sun is out. So you can see that, and you'll see as the sun is setting in the west, the pretty large moon rising in the east, especially at the beginning of this week. That will change as we get farther into the week, but at least at the beginning you'll see that occur as the moon is in the appropriate phase for that. So we'll go back to the western part of the sky, and sunset tonight, or this week at least, will be just after 8 o'clock. So we've now entered the 8 o'clock hour for sunset for this time of the year. And just like we've been mentioning, you'll notice that bright looking thing come into view, and there it is again. We've mentioned it many, many times, and that is the planet Venus. It is still there. There it is. Second planet from the sun. And last week it was the brightest it could get because of its position. It was fairly close to us, and at the right phase for it to be as bright as it can get as seen from Earth. This week it's not as bright, but still blazing in the west. So take advantage of that while it's still there, along with those winter stars that are still surrounding it, but finally beginning to set. If you look closely down here, there's Orion the Hunter, his belt, his shoulders, there he is. He's still there, but he's getting pretty low in the sky, getting pretty tough to see. So I can finally say farewell to Orion in our spring sky, even though Orion belongs in the winter sky. And his wintertime brethren are still around him, his two dogs, Canis Major and Canis Minor. Above Orion, we still have a little more time to see the Gemini twins and Auriga, the charioteer, a little more to the north with the really bright star Capella. So all of these objects are getting pretty low in our sky. And here in the spring, we of course can still celebrate straight up in the sky the constellation we call Leo. There's Leo the lion. There's his head, which looks like a backwards question mark. Here's the body, and there is the tail of Leo. We can kind of click on him, turn him on. He was a pretty terrible creature from Greek mythology. We've mentioned before, but Hercules had to fight Leo the lion in the sky. So if you want to know that spring is here, look out for Leo. He'll be out there. Not far from Leo, though, trailing behind him at the beginning of this week is the moon. Now, once you look at the moon, this week at least, you'll notice it's what's called gibbous shape, and that's when the moon is more than half full, is what gibbous means. So that's when it's getting pretty big in the sky, not quite a full moon, but getting there, at least when it's a waxing gibbous. So we'll notice that. And this is on Monday night. If we get to Tuesday, the moon will be pretty close to the star Spica, which is part of the constellation Virgo the Maiden, and not too far from the star Arcturus right here. That's that red star, red giant star that's at the end of its life and kind of bloating up. So Arcturus and Spica, these bright spring stars, will be near the moon. Now if we fast forward a couple more days into Wednesday and then Thursday, that's when the moon will be full. We'll have a full moon on Thursday, and not only a full moon, but also something we call a supermoon. You may have heard that term before. The news and media like to kind of mention that term, and you hear it on the internet all the time now. It's relatively new, at least in the public sphere. The term's been around for a little while, and that's when the moon is full and close to us in its orbit. It's what's called a perigee moon, or at least near perigee. Perigee is when the moon is closest to Earth in its orbit, and apogee is when it's farthest from us in its orbit, because the moon's orbit is not completely circular, it's more oval shaped. And when it's closest to us and full, the moon will be a little bit bigger and brighter in the sky. Now, it's not much bigger, at least in diameter, only about 7% bigger. Its area is a little bit bigger, and its brightness can get up to maybe 15% brighter than a normal full moon. So you may notice a little more brightness, but size most likely not. If you did a lineup of a normal full moon, an average distance of about 242,000 miles away, and then the supermoon for this Thursday on the 7th, when it's about 224,000 miles away, even though those are pretty big differences in distance, at least for us, for our viewing of the moon, it wouldn't make much difference in size. But again, brightness, you may notice a difference there. One thing that would be different are the tides. The tides are more extreme. When the moon, earth, and sun line up, either during a full moon or a new moon, the sun and moon's gravity bulge the earth more than normal. The bulge is where the tide gets brought up, or the water of earth gets brought up, and earth spins into that. And then the lower part is low tide, when the water is not as high up. And during a full and new moon, the tides are more extreme. They're higher and lower during a high and low tide. So that is a little more pronounced during a super moon. So that's one major difference. One other thing I'll just mention quickly is that when the moon is deemed a supermoon, more people are paying attention. So that means more people are probably going to watch it rise out of the east if the weather is cooperating. And for us in Daytona, that means watching it on the beach, watching it rise out of the ocean. And a lot of folks notice, and I myself see it too, the moon looks bigger to us than normal to our eyes. And that's actually an illusion. The moon is no bigger than when it's higher up than when it's low. That's called the moon illusion. It's a weird thing, and we think it has to do with there's a couple of reasons that may explain that. And one might be that when the moon is rising, especially when it's low in the sky, you're comparing the moon to the ground, or at least Earth. And that comparison in your brain makes the moon look a little bit bigger. Another explanation is our brains think the sky may seem like a bowl that's been flattened, where the top part of the sky to your brain seems closer to us, and the rim, or the horizon, seems farther out. And since your brain may think it's farther out here and the moon is the same size it always is, your brain kind of compensates for that and makes you think the moon is bigger when it's low compared to when it's high up. If you still don't trust me on this, then watch the moon when it's low, put your hand or finger next to the moon, and notice how much it covers that up. Then wait for the moon to get higher up in the sky, and notice how it covers up your hand or your finger again, or how much your finger covers up the moon, either way, and it will cover the same amount. It will look no different. So it can help you to understand the moon is the same size no matter where it is in the sky on any given night. So that's kind of interesting. Now the moon will be a different color low in the sky. It kind of has an orangish reddish color. That's not an illusion. That actually does happen, not because the moon is actually different in color, but the light we see from the moon is going through more atmosphere, and that scatters the light more so where the red comes through and makes the moon look a more reddish color. So you may notice that during the rising of the moon in the sky. It's the same reason why a sunset or sunrise looks very red in the sky. So that's kind of interesting. So this week has a lot of interesting things going on with the moon. And you'll notice later on, at least as we get later in the week and real late at night, the moon will start getting pretty close to some summer stars, and mentioned it last week, but if I speed up time, we'll zoom in here to the southeast. There's the moon next to the star Antares, which is the heart of Scorpius, the scorpion, that really big star that could be hundreds of times, 700 plus times bigger than our sun, really, really big. So it enters that area. If you go a little bit later than that and go past midnight into the early morning hours, then the moon will have entered into the early morning area where we start to get close to planets. And this is actually a little too far. It was on the 11th. So by the 10th on Sunday, the moon will be fairly close to these planets. And one other object or thing I'll mention is a meteor shower is technically occurring in the middle of this week. If I back up the time to the 5th, which is a Tuesday, and then kind of Wednesday time frame, you'll see rising of the east here. This is the Eta Aquariids inside the constellation called Aquarius, the water bearer. So the Eta Aquariids is a fairly decent meteor shower. It's the meteors or the debris trail from Halley's Comet, or Comet Halley, that many of you probably heard of before, pretty famous. That periodic comet that last swung by us in 1986. Well, it leaves behind a debris field, and that creates the meteor shower in the beginning of May of each year that emanates out of Aquarius, and that's where you get the Eta Aquariids. Now, the bad thing about this meteor shower this year is that the moon will be pretty big near the peak of the shower, so the moon's light will interfere with the meteor shower, unfortunately. But you may get lucky and see a meteor or two depending on the night you're looking at it, especially if you're looking at this earlier in the week when the moon is not as close. Now again, like I said earlier, we have these planets. The moon will be nearby at the end of the week here. Close to these planets, which we've mentioned already, we have these planets located in the east and southeast. Right here we have Mars, the reddish planet, then Saturn, and Jupiter. So those planets are visible, especially if you're up between 4 and 6 in the morning. I know that's pretty early, but it's worth it if you want to see a whole bunch of planets. They look like non-twinkling stars. And really watch them carefully, because as we go through this year into summertime, they will eventually enter our evening sky, especially Saturn and Jupiter in the summertime. So take a look at that, at those planets at that time of year. If you go to next week, then the moon will actually pass by these planets and get pretty close to Jupiter and Saturn and close to Mars as well. So just kind of looking forward even to next week. But eventually, after you see those planets, the sun will rise, and sunrise, at least this week, is between 6:30 and 6:40 in the morning, which is a perfect way to end this program. So I hope you enjoyed another weekly update of our sky, and since this video comes out on May 4th, I will say May the 4th be with you. Yes, we are Star Wars nerds, and hope you enjoy this tour of the sky, and hope you enjoy going out and finding these things on your own. That's the best way to experience the universe, is doing it on your own. And thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you can come back and take a look at more of this great content we're putting out there and more updates of our sky. Thank you, take care, and happy stargazing.